Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. This is a great day for the state of Missouri. It is an honor today to introduce 4 outstanding Missourians who are being nominated by President Trump for the federal bench. And we're very proud of the fact that these are President Trump's first judicial nominees from the state of Missouri. Let me start with Missouri's Josh Devine, who is our current Solicitor General. Josh's experience as Solicitor General is wide-ranging. He has litigated in trial courts and appellate courts, in the state Supreme Court, in federal trial courts, in federal appellate courts, dozens and dozens, and maybe hundreds of times by this point. And any way you look at his record, his success record, it's astounding. Just to quantify it in dollar terms, Josh, as Solicitor General of Missouri, has won in dollar terms. He has a $725 billion, that's with a B, billion-dollar win record for the state of Missouri, including a judgment against China for the harms caused to Missourians during COVID-19 of $25 billion. Josh comes to us from Yale Law School. He's been a clerk at the United States Supreme Court for Justice Clarence Thomas. He worked in the Missouri Attorney General's office, first as a Deputy Solicitor General, where I had the privilege to hire him in 2017, then here in the Senate as Chief Counsel to me, serving on this committee, and then back to the Solicitor General's office now in the state of Missouri. And he's done all of this while serving his wife and family, which is probably the most important service he's rendered. They're here today. His beautiful and brilliant wife, Elizabeth, and their 6 children. And I hope it's okay if I tell everybody that number 7 is on the way. So Elizabeth and the kids are all with us today, and we're so glad to have them. I'll just add one other note, which is something about Josh's personal fortitude. Just a couple of years ago, while he was in the midst of these very high-profile, high-intensity, high-stakes lawsuits, Josh suffered a catastrophic accident and was confined to a wheelchair. His early prognosis was he may not ever walk again. But Josh fought to regain his ability to walk, just as he has fought for Missourians in court day in and day out. And you'll see here in a moment when he walks to the table that he has now fully regained his ability. We thank the Lord for that, but we also look at his tenacity and the character that it displays. Like Josh Devine, Maria Lanahan comes to us from the Missouri Attorney General's office. She's a graduate of Gonzaga University, the University of Chicago Law School, and she has been a force as the principal Deputy Solicitor General in the state of Missouri. Here again, Maria's experience is wide-ranging, litigating in courts at every level, trial courts, appellate courts, federal courts, state courts. And she, before joining the Attorney General's office, she had elite federal clerkships. She served in private practice. She did in-house counsel work. I'm really taken with what Missouri Attorney General Andrew Bailey, who's here today, by the way. We welcome you, General Bailey. It's great to see you. Andrew said that Maria was, in his view, one of the finest legal minds in America and one of the finest legal minds he has ever served with. It's a delight to see Maria here today. Zach Bluestone, his legal career has taken him literally everywhere, and he has excelled everywhere he's been. He's had stints at Georgetown, the University of Oxford, Harvard Law. Zach is surely among the best educated lawyers that we'll see on this committee. He clerked on the 8th Circuit Court of Appeals. He has worked in all 3 branches of the federal government. He has significant trial and appellate experience in both federal and state court. He worked ably by my side in the Missouri Attorney General's office as we work to protect the Constitution and the law, and his record as a prosecutor is absolutely second to none. And finally, the Honorable Chris Stevens. I know Senator Schmidt will want to say a lot more about Judge Stevens, so let me just say briefly, we're so proud that he is a Missourian through and through. He's a 6th-generation Missourian who did his undergraduate work at the University of Missouri, graduated from the University of Missouri School of Law, spent 15 years as a federal prosecutor in our state. I'm told he's one of the best federal prosecutors we've ever had in the state of Missouri and is now serving ably on the bench in the state of Missouri. He was first assistant to Senator Schmidt, and he is going to make an absolutely terrific federal judge. I will just say finally, Mr. Chairman, in closing, these are 4 tremendously, immensely, superlatively qualified nominees. And I look forward to seeing them approved by this committee and confirmed in due course on the floor of the Senate. I'm going to yield my time now to Senator Blackburn. Just before I do, I just want to just clarify one thing to make sure I understood your answer, Mr. Hermendorfer, to my friend Senator Durbin's question. He's asking about the CASA case. He talked about your brief filed in the CASA case. The state of Tennessee was the party they're filing. Is that correct?
That's right, and there's no filing that I would ever make or have made that would not reflect the interest of Tennessee.
You're representing your client. This is the state of Tennessee. You work for the state of Tennessee.
That's correct. I'm a state public servant who has a client and adheres to the direction of my appointed boss, the Attorney General.
And I think your amicus brief also spent a good deal of time arguing that courts do not have Article III power to bind non-parties. In other words, it was about universal injunctions or nationwide injunctions. Wasn't that a core piece of your amicus brief?
That was an important part of the brief.
Yeah, I thought so. Ms. Hermandover, we're going to go to Senator Moody, but let me just ask you beforehand, just to make sure that I'm clear. My colleague was just asking about the number of cases that you've tried to a jury and cross-examinations performed before a jury and direct examinations performed before a jury. What court are you being nominated to?
The Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals.
A Court of Appeals. Do you have any appellate experience at all?
I have litigated probably over 100 appellate cases.
Over 100 appellate cases. How many different courts of appeals, how many circuits, how many different circuits have you argued or litigated in front of?
I've argued in front of 9 circuits in the Supreme Court.
Nine
Not
circuits.
argued, litigated.
Litigated. 9 circuits in the Supreme Court, over 100 appellate cases. That sounds like quite a bit of experience to me. Ms. Hermandover, let me just stay with this question about the Title IX litigation that Senator Welch was just asking you about. Tell us about the Title IX litigation that you carried on behalf of the state of Tennessee.
Sure. In April of 2024, the Department of Education issued a final rule interpreting Title IX, which, of course, bars discrimination on the basis of sex in any federally funded educational program, interpreting that language to bar discrimination on the basis of gender identity and other, quote, sex-based characteristics. And as part of that rule, which, again, was a rule, did not go through Congress, the Department of Education informed all federally funded educational institutions from pre-K through college that sex-separated spaces like locker rooms and bathrooms must instead be assigned by gender identity and not sex. And in similar ways, sex-separated programs like intramural sports and others fell in the ambit of that rule.
Let me just stop you right there. I want to make sure we understand the significance of this. What you're saying is that the Biden administration used an administrative process to interpret a law, a landmark law passed by Congress, Title IX, to interpret it, to require your state, and indeed every state, to allow men, biological men, into women's locker rooms, to allow men, biological men, into women's sports, to allow men, biological men, into any space that a biological woman might otherwise claim under the ambit of Title IX. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And so you litigated on behalf of your state to preserve. Would you say that Title IX is a landmark piece of legislation?
Absolutely.
Would you say that Title IX took years, indeed decades, to achieve?
That's correct.
Would you say that Title IX is a cornerstone of women's sports and the ability for women to have the same opportunities as men at the collegiate level and indeed every level, to have sports opportunities, athletic opportunities, leadership opportunities? I mean, is this an important statute?
It is, and for a former athlete, it hits especially close to home.
Yeah, you've lived it, have you not?
That's right.
So when the Biden administration issued a rule, not a law, not passed by this Congress, a rule that would have completely changed the meaning of Title IX, would you say that that's a pro-woman agenda?
We argued that the considerations of women were not adequately accounted for in the rulemaking process, and virtually every court to consider that rule, almost a dozen, agreed with the position Tennessee advanced on behalf of 6 states in our litigation.
Every court virtually to consider the litigation agreed with your position. Is that correct?
Including the Supreme Court in a stay application.
Including the Supreme Court of the United States. Would you say it is fair to call the effort to undermine a landmark piece of legislation for women that you yourself benefited from, that fair and equal opportunity? Would you say it's fair to call that a dark chapter in the history of this country?
I mean, certainly on behalf of Tennesseans, we thought that that rule was unlawful and inappropriate, and we were happy to succeed in the litigation against it.
Well, I just want to tell you, I'm happy you succeeded in the litigation. As the father of a 4-year-old daughter, I'm delighted that you succeeded in the litigation. And I want to thank you on behalf of her and my whole family. I want to thank you for going to battle for our daughters, for going to battle for the women you played sports with, for standing up for this landmark legislation and for fighting it. And yes, I want to say it was indeed a dark chapter. The last 4 years have been a hellacious chapter in the Department of Justice. Those aren't your words, those are mine, to be clear, but I think it's absolutely a fact, whether we're talking about the assault on women's rights, entitled in the Title IX context and others, where we're talking about the assault on religious believers. Let's not forget, this is the Department of Justice that recruited informants into Catholic parishes in this country. If that's not a dark chapter in this country's history, I don't know what the heck is. This is a Justice Department that activated the counterterrorism division against parents who went to school board meetings. If that's not a dark chapter, I don't know what is. This is a government, an administration the last 4 years that collaborated with the biggest corporations in the world to censor speech they don't like and then lied about it. If that's not a dark chapter, I don't know what is. In fact, I'd go so far to say it is the worst chapter, the worst in the history of the Department of Justice the last 4 years. Those are my views, not yours, Ms. Hermendorfer. But I will just say, when it comes to the litigation that you carried out on behalf of the state of Tennessee, I think you did a great service, not just to Tennessee, but for the nation. And I want to thank you for it. Ms. Hermendorfer, thank you for your testimony. You are excused. And with that, I'll invite the 4 district court nominees to come forward to the witness table. And we'll take just a moment here, and we'll administer the oath and then begin the second panel. All right. It is the custom of this committee to administer the oath to all nominees who come before the committee, and you're all standing and ready to do it. So I'll stand with you if you'd raise your right hand and repeat after me. Do you swear that the testimony you're about to give before the committee will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? You may be seated. Well, we welcome all of you here today. It is our normal process, if you so desire, to allow you to introduce any folks who are with you, including your families, and then to give a brief opening statement. And we'll just go down the panel. We'll start with Mr. Bluestone and then proceed all the way down to Judge Stevens. Mr. Bluestone, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Senator Hawley. I'd like to start by thanking Chairman Grassley, Ranking Member Durbin, and the committee for holding this hearing. I'm also incredibly grateful to the President for the honor of this nomination. To you, Senator Hawley and Senator Schmidt, thank you for the kind words in your introductions. Thank you for your support throughout this process. And thank you so much for the trust that you both placed in me as a deputy solicitor all those years ago when you were both serving as Missouri Attorney General. Over the last few months, I've thought a lot about relationships and community. This process has reminded me of just how blessed I am with the people in my life. They are absolutely the reason I'm here today. Fittingly, the opportunity to serve my community is the reason I want to become a federal judge. I can think of no better use of my talents to make a meaningful impact on the lives of those around me. I regret not having time to recognize everyone who's gotten me here, but I'd like to highlight just a few, starting with 4 key mentors: Senator Jim Talent, John Sauer, Jeff Jensen, and Judge Ray Grunder, who's here today with his wonderful wife, Kim. Judge Grunder is a rare combination of brilliance and humility, and he's a model I'll strive to emulate if confirmed. I'm also lucky to be joined by 3 lifelong friends, John, Todd, and Barath, and I owe my co-clerk, Daniel, a huge debt of gratitude for his support. As for family, it means the world to me that my brother Alex and mother-in-law Shannon have traveled so far to be here, and there's no distance that my mother would not have, that would have kept my mother from coming. In many ways, today is the culmination of all the work she put into ensuring that I had the educational opportunities that my parents never did. I also have her to thank for my faith and commitment to family. My mom's partner, John, is here as well, and I'd like to recognize him for his service to our country, both as a Marine in Vietnam and through his career with the FBI. My biggest supporters are behind me, my wife, Abby, and our little bud, Ezra, who's been instructed to cry if I get any tough questions. I'm looking in that direction, Senator Kennedy. I actually met Abby when we were clerking in the courthouse where I hope to serve, and she's been a pillar of my life ever since. She's showed so much strength and devotion as a mother, and I'll never be able to repay her selflessness over the last few months, especially managing travel logistics with the baby, despite having her own major oral argument in St. Louis yesterday. Finally, I'd like to recognize my dad, Randy, who we lost to a battle with leukemia over almost 20 years ago. My dad's fearlessness and grit in starting a business are something that I'll always admire, particularly after having helped run that company after his passing. My dad often had some choice words for his lawyers after getting legal bills, but I know he's looking down today with a lot of pride. Thank you for giving me a few minutes to recognize those who got me here, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bluestone. Mr. Devine.
Thank you, Senator Hawley. I want to thank Chairman Grassley and Ranking Member Durbin for holding this hearing today. I want to thank Senator Hawley and Senator Schmidt for all the support you've provided to me during this process. And of course, most of all, I want to thank President Trump for giving me the honor of this nomination. I'm joined today in spirit and in person by too many to name, but I'll mention a few. My wonderful parents, James and Susan, are here. So too is my wife of 15 years. As Senator Hawley mentioned earlier, Elizabeth is pregnant with our 7th child. We have been truly blessed. The other 6 children are here as well. You haven't heard from them because the younger 2, the boys, have been asleep the last 2 hours. 15 years as a husband and 13 as a father has taught me much more than I ever learned in school. Alice, for example, our miracle child, had open heart surgery when she was just 2 months old. And grappling with the many challenges she has faced since then has taught us the virtues of patience, prayer, and perspective. On a professional level, I'm especially grateful to the Attorney General of Missouri, who's here today, Andrew Bailey. When he hired me as Missouri Solicitor General, I knew I was being asked to fill big shoes. My predecessor, after all, was John Sauer, who is now the U.S. Solicitor General. It has been a privilege to serve the people of Missouri these past years. And sitting here today, I'm reminded of what Justice Ginsburg told this committee a few decades ago. What has become of me could happen only in America. My grandmother, born into poverty overseas, never had a day of education in her life. My dad was luckier. He did miss several years of school, but Grandma eventually pinched enough pennies to bring them over here to America. And once here, she learned English by watching American soap operas. She made a living cleaning people's homes, and she did her best to navigate the anti-Italian discrimination that was all too common at the time. Today, barely a generation later, I sit here before this august body, having been given extraordinary opportunities, both professional and educational. But the most extraordinary thing about my family's story is just how ordinary it is. No other country provides so much opportunity to so many, and that is one reason I've dedicated my career to a life of public service. My dedication to public service was reinforced a year ago when a life-threatening accident put me in the ICU and left me unable to walk. For 6 months, I was confined to a wheelchair and then a cane. I'm still recovering to this day, but those are the kinds of experiences that humble you, and they're the kinds of experiences that broaden your empathy to those whose trials and tribulations last not just a season, but a lifetime. Fortunately, although we come from different walks of life, the law promises equality. I had the privilege to clerk for a judge who, when he was Attorney General of Alabama, gave a speech condemning and rebuking the segregationists of that state's past. While lesser men like Governor George Wallace had promised to thwart the Constitution, Attorney General Bill Pryor, 4 decades later, promised the opposite: equal under law today, equal under law tomorrow, and equal under law forever. If confirmed, that is how I will judge. I look forward to answering the committee's questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Devine. Ms. Lanahan.
Thank you, Senator Hawley, and Senator Schmidt for your kind introductions and support. I'd like to start by humbly thanking President Trump for nominating me to this position. Thank you, Chairman Grassley, Ranking Member Durbin, and all the members of this committee for the opportunity to address the committee today. I also have many other people to thank who are here supporting me. Thank you to my husband and best friend, Michael Lanahan, who's here. Michael is responsible for introducing me to the great state of Missouri, which I have grown to love and have since devoted my career to. My oldest son is also here. He is 7 years old, and my other 2 children, 5-year-old and a 1-year-old, are not here because I was not so sure that they would be able to abide by Senate decorum. So they're at home with Michael's parents, and I'd like to thank Kevin and Kathy Lanahan for taking care of them. Thank you to my parents, Kevin and Ann Hassett, who are here. I would not be who I am today without their support and guidance. Thank you also to my siblings, and especially to my brother Kevin, who made it out here, and for bringing his family with him. That includes my sister Adriana Hassett, who is a newly minted American citizen, their children, and Audrey's mother-in-law, Susana Ibanez Cerda. Thank you to my friend Laurel Sagarts, who is here and who is an adoptive aunt to my children in St. Louis. And I would also like to extend my thanks to the 2 judges who I clerked for, Judge Grunder, who is here today with his wonderful wife, Kim, and Justice Zara, who was unable to make it today. These 2 judges have greatly impacted my understanding of what a judge's role should be. They are both committed to following the law as written and fairly and impartially resolving legal disputes, regardless of a party's background characteristics. I also want to extend my thanks to Missouri Attorney General Andrew Bailey, former Missouri Attorney General and now Senator Schmidt, First Assistant Attorney General Jay Atkins, my boss Josh Devine, who is next to me, and the many other colleagues who I have worked with at the Missouri Attorney General's office to serve the people of the state of Missouri. And finally, thank you to everyone else who has helped me and supported me along the way, including my many family members, friends, teachers, mentors, and former colleagues at Thompson Coburn and Charter Communications. I am honored to be nominated for this position, and if confirmed by the Senate, I pledge to decide cases fairly and impartially according to the rule of law. Thank you.
Thank you. Judge Stevens.
Thank you, Senator. Thanks to Chairman Grassley. Thanks to Ranking Member Durbin for holding this hearing. Thank you, Senator, for chairing the hearing. Also want to thank all the members of the committee who are here today for their attention and their time. Also, of course, Senator Hawley, Senator Schmidt, I thank you for your support as well as for your kind words earlier. Frankly, I'm humbled. I also want to thank my family who are here today. First and foremost, my wife, Lee. My wife is my rock. I want to thank her for her support over the years, for her sacrifice, for her grace throughout my career and at this time. Also, my children. Our oldest boy, Jack, is here, our son, Hank, and our daughter, Mary Rose. In all candor to the committee, Mary Rose expressed this morning that she really didn't want to come because this is boring, and I quote. But she is here, and so far, so good. I also, of course, want to thank my parents. Ed and Melita Stevens are here today, and I can't begin to thank them for all they've done for myself and my siblings as children and all the way up through till today. They've been a great example of great Americans, great citizens who've raised their children, loved them, and supported them through thick and thin. I'd also like to thank my law clerks, Clayton Watts and Tyler Dodd. My law clerk, Clayton, is here today. He's agreed to continue on for another year serving with me, regardless of which court I happen to be on at the time. So I'm glad that he could make it here. I'd also, if I could, like to remember one other person that's not here today, my maternal grandfather, Edmund W. Albright. He was a self-made lawyer in St. Louis. He put himself through law school, hung out a shingle, and took whatever case came in the door. As a young man, he taught me to love the law and our profession. I think of him all the time. Today, I'm wearing his watch, which has kept time for me throughout my career. I have his portrait in my chambers back in St. Louis, and I wish that he could be here today for this moment. I also would like to talk a little bit about my career to this point. I have the privilege of being a judge, a state judge in Missouri on the Missouri Court of Appeals Eastern District. I was appointed to that position in 2021 pursuant to the nonpartisan Missouri Court Plan. Before that, I had the honor of serving as First Assistant Attorney General to then Attorney General Eric Schmidt of Missouri. It was a great privilege. A lot has gone on, Senator, since our meeting at PJ's. I will say, if I could, that I'm glad we met at PJ's and not at Cracker Barrel. I understand that some attorneys general met with staffers at Cracker Barrel, which is, I love Cracker Barrel, but PJ's is the place in Kirkwood. Before that, I was in private practice at several points in my career, early in my career and in later years. And so what that means basically is that I've handled civil cases, I've handled criminal cases, I've appeared in federal court and state court, and particularly with regard to the United States District Court for the Eastern District of Missouri, Senator, as you acknowledged earlier, I was an assistant U.S. attorney there for 15 years. I would get up from my desk on the 20th floor of the Thomas F. Eagleton Courthouse, go down a few floors to see the Article III judges or the magistrate judges on at least a weekly basis. So I can tell you that if this body deems fit, then my returning to the U.S. District Court for the Eastern District of Missouri would be like coming home. So I appreciate the opportunity. I thank you for this hearing, and I look forward to answering your questions.
Thank you, Judge. We will start now the questioning. I will lead us off. Mr. Bluestone, let me just start with you. We'll just go down the panel. You are currently a violent crimes prosecutor in the United States Attorney's Office in the Eastern District. Tell us a little bit about the work that you do, the kinds of cases that you prosecute, and what you've learned from that experience.
Thank you, Senator Hawley. Being an AUSA in the Eastern District of Missouri has been probably the most fulfilling job that I've had. It was commended to me by Judge Grunder, and frankly, before I clerked for him, it was not something that was really on my radar. But as both of my home state senators are aware, there has been a violent crime epidemic in the city of St. Louis, in particular, and the area surrounding it, and it has been so gratifying to be able to do something about that. I prosecuted carjacking offenses, armed robberies, other gun crimes, drug crimes, have been involved in white-collar investigations as well, and the work is extremely rewarding. I will say I fully appreciate the importance of every single case that would come before my court if I were so fortunate to be confirmed. Having seen probably north of 100 cases myself, it's incredibly significant to the defendants who would be appearing before me, the victims, their families, law enforcement who were involved, and I take that responsibility very seriously now, and I would then too. I would also note that in addition to being a violent crimes prosecutor, I also serve as our district's appellate chief. So I handle my own cases certainly, but also am responsible for overseeing every appeal, both civil and criminal, that comes through our office.
Is it safe to say, Mr. Bluestone, given your experience as a federal prosecutor, the volume of cases that you've seen and handled, that you know your way around a courtroom?
I would like to think so, Senator.
We would like to think so, too.
Supervised more than 1,000 cases, and as I mentioned, handled more than 100 of my own.
Fantastic. Mr. Devine, let's talk a little bit about your experience. You are the Solicitor General of the state of Missouri. If you had to ballpark it, this may be tough, but if you had to ballpark it, how many cases would you say that you have litigated just in your role as a Solicitor General? You were Deputy Solicitor General for several years, but let's just leave that to one side. Just as SG, how many cases did you get?
I mean, it would be impossible to know. It's in the hundreds of cases that I have supervised or personally litigated myself. As Solicitor General, I oversee the appeals for 200 attorneys in the office. We're getting a lot of appeals that are coming through that we're supervising on a daily basis. I also have a second job, not just Solicitor General, but also the Director of Special Litigation. And so I'm in charge of the unit, the trial unit, that is tasked with taking some of the most complicated matters that the state of Missouri is dealing with and taking those matters to court, to trial court especially.
So in these dual roles, you have represented the state of Missouri in trial courts.
That's right.
And in appellate courts.
That's right.
And in the state Supreme Court.
That's right.
And in the United States Supreme Court.
That's
right.
right.
You've handled some of the office's most complex matters, most complex litigation. Give us one example of a piece of complex litigation that you have handled and what you learned from it.
Yeah, I think the student loans cases that the office argued, we've now had 3 of those cases during the previous administration. Those were very, very quick cases. The administration at the time was trying to cancel hundreds of billions of dollars in student loans. We felt that that was unlawful. There wasn't any statutory basis for that. The courts ultimately agreed with us in all those cases. But it was a very, very quick moving thing, and we needed to move quickly to ensure that there wasn't permanent irreparable harm. So one thing we did in one of those cases, we actually sued before the rule had been published, which is a pretty novel thing to do, and we were able to come up with an interesting argument that ultimately prevailed in court for why we were able to do that. We showed that there was irreparable harm. $200 billion was about to go out the door, and we ultimately prevailed in that litigation.
And your success record is hard to argue with. I mentioned it in my opening statement, what you have won in judgments for the state of Missouri through the litigation you've handled totals in the hundreds of billions if you add it all up. I mean, is that correct?
That's right. I think about $700 billion.
700 billion. That's pretty good, General Bailey. That's pretty good. Ms. Lanahan, in my expiring moments here, let me just ask you to say a word about your extensive and varied legal career. You're the principal deputy Solicitor General now for the state of Missouri. If you had to ballpark, how many cases would you guess that you have handled in trial courts, appellate courts? Put them all together. I mean, what would it be?
Certainly upwards of 50, and I have also been in charge of many of the appeals in our office. I oversee directly at least 1/4 of the appeals, and I review them before they are sent in, and I've been doing that for the last 4 years or so. And we have numerous appeals out of many groups, so that's employment law. And you have to remember that when you're doing an appeal, you're not only dealing with the trial court issues and whether what the trial court got it right, but also the appellate issues, which is a whole nother layer of separate issues on top.
Very good. Well, Judge Stevens, I wanted to ask you a whole bunch of extremely difficult questions that would have really been impossible to answer, but I'll leave that to Senator Schmidt. But first, Senator Durbin. It's going to be Senator Schmidt's turn, but can I just ask Mr. Devine, are you running for office?
No, Senator, I've never been a political candidate.
Are you seeking the nomination of a party or the approval of voters?
No, Senator.
You've been nominated to be a judge, is that correct?
That's correct.
Will you be able to faithfully follow the law as you understand it?
Absolutely, and in fact, in my day-to-day, when I'm advocating the interests of the state of Missouri, I set aside my own personal beliefs every single time I'm advocating the interests of my clients.
And what's the controlling Supreme Court case on the life issue now, as you understand it?
The Dobbs decision.
Will you follow it faithfully?
Absolutely.
And on that note, questions for the record may be submitted until June the 11th at 5 p.m. Thank you to the nominees, and with that, the hearing is adjourned.